Ein mevatel isur lechatchila. Okay, Tzadi Tetzif Hey. Yeah? Ein mevatel isur lechatchila. Vafilu nafal letoch heter she'ein bo shiur levatlo ein mosifin alav heter kedei levatlo. There are two cases. There's lechatchila. In other words, you have the isur not in the tarovet, and the possibility of taking the isur be'en and throwing it into a tarovet to be mevatel it. That's one case. That's what he starts with. That's ein mevatel isur lechatchila. And then, even if it falls into a tarovet, but what's lacking is the shiur, ein mosifin alav heter kedei levatlo. Okay? So you can't do that either. Okay? All right. Avar ubitlo, o sheriba alav. Again, talk about both those cases. Avar ubitlo means you took the piece of nevel and you threw it into the chulent, right? Or sheriba alav, the piece of nevel fell into the chulent all by itself, and you just added to it. Im b'shogeg mutar, so b'diavad the food is mutar. V'im b'meizid asur lamevatel atzmo im hu shelo. If it's eno shelo, that's again to the sugi of ein adam oser davar she'eno shelo. Okay, but if it's also the person that did it, if the food belongs to him. V'chein l'mishin itbatel b'shvilo. That actually, halacha l'mais, has very important ramifications. It came up years ago with the whole tuna fish scandal. Is anybody old enough to remember the tuna fish scandal? They weren't putting, wasn't it? I think they were just, the dolphins. Right, so Baruch Hashem, that there was an outcry in the world, not for cautious reasons, but to save the dolphins. So they actually, it was bad business for Starkist to put dolphins in their tuna, so you can be, so it's not a problem anymore. I don't think it's dolphin safe, right? But so the thing is, they what? Dolphin. They don't use dolphins for anything. They just swim they feed on tuna, so they swim together with tuna. So when you let out your net, you're gonna get some dolphins. So the question is, I don't know what so in any case, they said, but the amount of dolphins are batel. Right? But then they said, but l'chatchila, they know that they're collecting the dolphins, so it's bitul l'chatchila. So, but I didn't do it, but it's l'misha nitbadlu avuro, right? And the question is whether kahal yad that you're going to sell to is considered nitbatel avuro. That's one issue. I don't talk about that here. Actually, if you take a look,
couldn't you claim they don't know for sure if the dolphin will be caught in the net?
I think there must have been some umdana that they did know. Okay. Again, I'm not up on the mitziut exactly, right? But if you take a look at the Chidushei Rabbi Akiva Eiger, okay, v'chein l'mishin itbatel b'shvilo. Chidushei Rabbi Akiva Eiger on the Mechaber, it says it's asur l'mavatel atzmo im hu shelo v'chein l'mishin itbatel b'shvilo. Okay, so the Rabbi Akiva Eiger says v'chein l'mishin itbatel b'shvilo im bitel al stam l'mishe yirtze liknot harei hu kemo shenaseh b'shvilam biyichud v'asur l'kulam. Right? I don't know. It's not like I'm being mevatel it so that my kid can eat the chulent or my guests can eat the chulent. I'm mevatel it because I want to sell it. So I don't know who I'm mevatel it for. Whoever buys it. So that's al hastam.
Does Starkist have to be Jewish?
So that's a separate thing. I think that if they're not Jewish, there's no bittul.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know why they made it, unless it happened to be Jewish. But I don't. Like when I was thinking about it afterwards, there's no bittul. There's no bittul l'chatchila. They're goyim, and they're allowed to eat dolphins. Right? So it's there's no bittul. So I don't understand what the whole problem was. You'd have to go dig up the discussion, but there should not be any issue of bittul l'chatchila there. Okay. But in a case where a Jew is being mevatel something l'chatchila because they want to sell it. So anybody they want to sell it to, any customer is considered l'misha nitbatel avuro. Okay. Then he says, "V'asu lekulam v'nishma mizeh da'af misha nitbatel avuro lo yada mizeh." Right? I didn't know that they were doing it for me. Right? So delo ketaz sif katan yud. Taz says that you have to know about it. Right? V'chein l'misha nitbatel b'shvilo perish rashal gam perkin anasha. 1 second. Tainu dafka shiyada. You see the Taz? Dafka sheyada zeh shenitbatel avuro. Then it's usher for me shenitbatel avuro. But why should you? Otherwise, why should you be kones the person shenitbatel avuro? Right? V'neichale afiu lo tziva oto levatlo. V'neichale, right? Afiu lo tziva oto levatlo. The fact that it's in my interest is enough to make it usher for me. Okay? Aval im lo yadami menu sharilei. Shareyu kishogeg. So he was mazed, but I'm shogeg. Right? Makoma asulo, asur gam l'kein l'vnei beito, etc. Okay? So, you see this from this, what Rabbi Akiva Eger quotes, it's more machmi, right? Because I don't know what they're doing out the Lev Yam. They were mevatel it for me, but I don't know anything about it. So I'm shogeg. So it's mutter if you're shogeg. Okay? I mean, you could say that the knas is on the mocher. I'm just thinking out loud. The knas is on the mocher means he can't sell it al pi halacha. So so the way you get to the person that was mavatel, you get to them through me. Like, I didn't do anything wrong. For me, it should be mutter, but you make it also for me so to get them, not to get me. Okay, that would be, I suppose, the rationale of Rabbi Akiva Eger.
Well, what's the definition of bishvilo? So
that's exactly what we're talking about.
Meaning, no, but I meant, so I don't eat it, but selling it gets me hanan money, meaning.
Right, but the issue is to eat it. To eat it. It's not also, if it's talking about an Isser Hana, that's a different story. We're not talking about being Mevatel Basa B'chalav. Okay? So Mevatel dolphins, right? Dolphins are Mutter B'hana. Right? Okay. Even if they're intelligent. Okay. Okay. So let's just continue here. Asurim l'mochro gam ken liYisrael acher shelo yehnu mima shebatlu. Okay. So even if it's mutter for the other Yisrael to eat, right? If in a case where I wasn't mevatel it for another Yisrael, say I was mevatel it for myself. Okay. So I can't eat it now. So I'll sell it. So they made a gzeira on me that I can't sell it.
So that's what I just asked.
No. What the Rabbi Akiva Eger says is the person that buys it for you who can't eat it.
No, but
right?
I was asking. Okay, maybe I wasn't clear.
Okay.
I was asking, meaning the bishvil, doing something for myself.
Or bishvil, or lemishin itbatel bishvilo is in order they should eat it. They should be allowed to eat it.
So when the Ramah says that I shouldn't get hana from it, he just is, what is how is he?
Shelo yeheneh mimashe from the Isser. But it doesn't affect the buyer. I'm not allowed to sell it. He can buy it, but I can't sell it. I can give it to him as a matana. Okay. Ulishar kol adam mutar. V'dafka shenitarev yavesh biyavesh. O afilu lach belach leman da'amar she'enim omrim bo chaticha na'aset nevela. Okay, now we're bringing in the other. If it's yavesh b'yavesh, right? So that's where b'di'eved it will be mutter if it's b'shogeg, yeah. But if it's lach belach, then there was netinat tam. Okay, so you can't be mevatel. It doesn't work, right? So. Afilu leman afilu belach belach leman de'amar she'ein omrim bo chaticha nasat nevela. Okay, but if chaticha nasat nevela, so you won't be able to mevatel לכתחילה because unless you mosif a tremendous amount, right, to connect the heter also. But what they're talking about is just being mevatel the isser. But if the isser spread, so to speak, and we're not going to get back into chaticha nasat nevela, but broadly speaking, it means the isser spread. So then it's not enough just to add a little bit more heter. You'd have to add heter against the heter in the tarovet as well. Okay? אבל חתיכה שבעלה איסור לא מהני שנתווסף אחר כך ההתר. דהאמרינם בחתיכה נעשית נבלה. Okay? ויש אומרים דאפילו במקום שלא אמרינם חתיכה נעשית נבלה, לא מהני ההתר לבטל, אלא אם כן נתווסף קודם שנודע התערובת. אבל אם נודע התערובת קודם, לא מהני מה שנתווסף אחר כך. That's very interesting. Why should that be? Anybody have any ideas? You get the case? Okay. Isser, this is what we thought. Isser fell into heter. Okay? Now I want to add to it to be mevatel it. Okay? So if nodah ta'arovet means I found out that Isser fell into the heter, and there isn't a sheer bittul, now it doesn't help to be marbeh anymore. Even if you don't say chanan. By virtue of the fact that I said that this tarovet is aser, that's enough. Any ideas?
It's aser.
You have to take. I think you have to take a formalistic approach that you already decided the question. Right? Even if you don't say chanan, right, but the tarovet is aser. And you decided that this tarovet is aser, so you have to relate to the whole tarovet as if it's aser, right? Not mitzad chanan that it changed its identity or anything like that. It's just that the tarovet is aser because you paskined on it. I'm not passing on this tarovet again. Right? You get one shot. It's like there's no double jeopardy on the tarovet.
Yeah, but that's inconsistent with the idea of thing being chosav v'neir.
So that's a question of when you say chosav v'neir. It could be chosav v'neir because the reality changed. That the people that say only chosav v'neir and min b'she'eino mino, when beforehand there was no tam and now there's tam. So it's a new. You can't say the tam is mutter. It has to do with how you understand tam ki'ikar. Yes, but it is connected to that. Okay.
Why here does the Rama give you both sides if you say chaticha? Why did we know he paskins that there is chanan in shar?
That's interesting.
Why is he telling me both sides and not just going how he paskins?
I could only surmise that he's leaving the door open if there are other circumstances to be mitzaref to the case. In other words, he hasn't closed the door. If it was just this issue, you say chanan b'shar isur or not, so he says, you say chanan b'shar isur. But suppose there's some sort of suffix, we're not sure if it was a ben yomo or not, all those type of questions, right? So, and there's a shita that you don't say chanan here anyway, right? Then you could throw that in. He's leaving it as an element to be mitzaref to make if the question is more complicated. All right. Isser shel divreihem. Okay. So
can you say also that it might be he's telling you that the nature of ein mevatlim isur l'chadchila is not regulated by the same. It's not the same discussion that we had about bittul. It's a separate. Certainly if you say it's a drabanan, it has its own rules.
Okay. Maybe that's one of the things. If you're willing to say that ein mevatlim isur l'chadchila is an isur drabanan, which we're going to talk about that, right? So then. He's willing to say, and for this purposes, you don't say chanan b'shar isur. Right. Yeah, okay. Okay. L'fi zeh, if you say that if noda tarovet, you can't be mosif, there's a very big chumrah, which is the Rama says lo no haykain. L'fi zeh hayat tzarich hachacham hamoreh levatel isur lachkor im nitvasef haeter la'achar shenoda. I suppose you're talking about a case where you can be something was added. So something fell in, and there wasn't a sheer bittul, and then b'shogeg something was added, right? And they come to the chacham and say, "What's the story?" They say, "Okay, it was b'shogeg, it was mutter." No, but according to this, I can't do that. Say 1 second. Did you know that the isser fell in? And did you paskin that it was asur already? And you have to go back and say, was the tarovet noda or not? Before, I can't trust what I see, because there's certain halachic decisions that might have been made which affect
There's something-
which
But it's
affect the
not
reality.
abstract then.
It's very funny. What?
No, but that proof that it's not that the svara that you said is probably not. It's not that you poskened up on the tarovet.
Why?
Because the point is that
Somebody else passed it on the
the
Torah.
Ramah is saying that even if it happened and it was no da, you didn't ask a shaila, but there was some.
No. So no does enough. In other words, at that point, there is or not bittul.
It's a
No,
different reality. It's somehow
No, that would be a din in reality.
It's respect to formalistically how we're going to treat.
Because you
the
decide the case. Even
it wasn't nobody. It wasn't. It's not.
you
like
know
the
what
Monogatazar
Woody Allen said that some rabbis say that pork is only prohibited at certain restaurants. Right? It doesn't have to. It's not subjective that way that you need a psak. It's enough that it was known that it fell in, and that makes it either batel if there's a shear or not batel if there's no shear. You don't need to be a rabbi to say chazer is treif. That was the point. Because if it fell in and it wasn't batel, then it's not batel. You don't need a rub to come along and say it's not batel.
No, but we have it in the sugyas in Avodah where you're not allowed to ask somebody, once you had a psak made, you're not allowed to go to ask somebody else to psak. Okay?
I understand, but that's a question of shikul adat. But here, the
formalistic reason.
There is something.
all right. Anyway, yeah.
To support what he's saying, there is something awkward about, on the one hand, the layperson, his knowledge about halakha has value, and then on the other hand, it doesn't.
I don't even know if he
have
has no the halakha. He just know that it happened. Once there's a leidat hasafek for the Jew, right? That something happened and it's his. And he has a relationship to what happened. So the halakha says what it says. I don't think you need some Talmud Chacham to come along and say, tell me what happened, and then paskin. It's either batel or not once somebody knows
So
about
he
it.
could know that it fell in, but he doesn't know that it's usher.
Right. That's the noda. I think.
That's
I don't
really
think he has to
different
know
than
it. I
what
think
he
it's by virtue. He doesn't have to know what the halacha is. He just has to know that happened. That's what noda tarovet means. Okay. This is v'lo nagukein. Okay. Isur shel divreim ein ma'arvinoto biyadayim. Okay, so until now we're talking about Isur Doraisa, two situations. An Isur Doraisa be'en, and an Isur Doraisa in a tarovis. Okay? Now, the truth is an Isur Doraisa in a tarovis could be a case of an Isur Darabanan, right? Because if it fell into a tarovis and there's enough of a shear to be mevatel it midoraisa, but not enough of a shear to mevatel it darabanan, right? For instance, min b'mino, if there's a row, so midoraisa it's batel, and the fact that it's not batel, then you need shishim, is only midrabanan. That's also an Isur Darabanan. Okay? But that started off as an Isur Doraisa, so that's the first seif. Now he's talking about an Isur Shel Divreim, right? An Isur which is Me'ikaro Darabanan. Ein ma'arvino to biyadayim k'dei levatlo. V'im asach ein b'meizid asur, aval im nafal me'atzmo ve'ein beheter k'dei levatlo marbe alav u'mevatlo. So here you do have a possibility of laharbot if it's an Isur Darabanan. Okay? Okay, we'll see all this in the sugya, when we see the Rishonim. Okay.
What's also the difference between when the Ramah says v'chein noagim and then when he says ve'en l'shanot? Like sometimes he only says v'chein noagim and sometimes he tells you en l'shanot.
I don't know. It's more emphatic. I don't know. V'chein should really be enough. You're right. I don't know why.
And sometimes he just says v'chein noagim.
Who knows? Maybe there were some people who were makil, so he had to I don't know. But v'chein noagim is a very important. When the Ramaz or anybody says v'chein noagim, it carries a tremendous amount of weight. We're not just saying something theoretical. We're saying this is what we did, and this is an endorsement of that. Okay. Okay. Let's stop with the Shulchan Aruch for a second. Let's stop with the Shulchan Aruch for now, and let's go back to the sugya. Okay. Okay. Actually, there's one more halacha in Sif Zayin. Hold on. Skip to Sif Zayin. There's something important. Okay. Im nivla isur mu'at letoch kli basar. Okay. O im darko shel to kli lishtamesh bo b'shefa heter muter lishtamesh bo lekatchila kevan she'isur mu'at ve'i efshar lavo lidei netinat tam lefichach isur mashu shenivla b'kdeira, right? that you generally use for a lot of heter, so there's no problem with bitul isul l'chadchila. So that tells you, this we're going to have to come through, this is the back door, we're going to come through to the front door, but this tells you something about what the problem with ein mevatel isul l'chadchila is. Right? If I say, if there's no chance that it's going to be usher, so then you can be mevatel isul l'chadchila. That's what he's saying here. Okay? So that leads us into the question that you have to be thinking about, why should it be that ein mevatel isul l'chadchila? Okay? So now let's just see. First is the Mishnah in first source here after the Shulchan Aruch. Okay, is a Mishnah in Masechet Shumot, and we'll see the Yerushalmi as well.
What's the definition of Isur Mu'at?
Okay, it's impossible that this should come to the Tinata. We'll see.
Proportional to what the show.
Okay. Okay. Sa'at Truma. Okay, this is in Perek Hey, Mishnah Tet. Okay. Sa'at Truma, even though it says Halacha Gimel, because in the Bar Ilan, it's divided that way. But if you open up your own Yerushalmi, it'll be Mishnah Tet. Okay. Sa'at Truma shenafla lepachot mime'ah. Okay. Truma is batal b'me'ah. Okay. V'achar kach naflu sham chulin. Right. And now, together with the additional chulin, there is me'ah against the Truma. Okay. Im shogeg mutar, v'im mezid asur. And as if you threw in, if you threw in more in order to be mevatel, so then it's asur b'di'eved, but if it fell by itself, it's mutar b'di'eved. Right? The assumption of the Mishnah, it's not even saying that to take the truma and to throw it into yoter mime'ah, that the Mishnah doesn't even bother telling you that that's asur to do. The whole discussion is what happens b'di'eved. Can you eat it? So if it happened b'shogeg, so then you can eat it. If it happened b'mezid means it was you were over an isser of mevatel isul l'chadchila, so you can't eat it b'di'eved. Okay, that's one source. The Gemara, Beitza here? No. Did I give you Gemara Beitza here? No. Gemara and Beitza. Oh yeah, one second. Yeah, one second. Let me see if I have the whole thing. Yes, if you look, okay, if you take a look here on the Beitza Daf Dalet Amud Bet, on the second page, Amar Rav Matna, Eitzim shenashru min hadekel letoch hatanur biyom tov. Okay, so the eitzim are muktzah. Marbelim eitzim uchanim umasikan. Okay, so you can add eitzim which are not muktzah and use them all as fuel. Vaha kamahapech b'yisura. So the Gemara says you're over the isur muktzah, but you're moving the eitzim which are muktzah. So we say came in the ruba deheterin inhu kamahapech behetera kamahapech. Right. So it's batel basically. Vaha kamavatel isur l'chadchila. Right. You added eitzim which are not muktzah, and you made a rove of eitzim that are not muktzah, so it's bitul l'chadchila. Utnan ein mevatel isul l'chadchila. Where's the Mishnah that says ein mevatel isul l'chadchila? Right? There's no Mishnah that says quote unquote ein mevatel isul l'chadchila. So Rashi, I think, sends us to this Mishnah. Okay, so the Gemara says hani mili b'doraita, aval b'drabanan mevatlin. All right, so that's where you get what we saw in the Shulchan Aruch. Okay. Not only is it bitul l'chadchila, so let's say I solved that problem. There's another problem, right? The problem is davar sheish lo matirin. So we say hani milhecha deita liisura be'enei hacha mikol kali isura. Right? The problem of davar sheish lo matirin is only if the isur is be'en, or if the isur is destroyed. So there's nothing, right? We talked about this in davar sheish lo matirin. So there's no isur which you're being matir. You're destroying it, so there's nothing there. Okay? Now, this is going to become significant. The mikol kali isura is, in the Gemara, relates to the problem of davar sheish lo matirin. It does not relate to ein mevatel isul l'chadchila, but there are Rishonim that fudge that, which we'll see. Okay? All right. In any case, so we have this, the Gemara says, hatnan ein mevatel isul l'chadchila. So this is the Mishnah. Okay? You have this also, go back here.
But this wouldn't have been a problem had you just dropped the match in there. The only reason that the
Oh, it's
problem
right.
is that you're moving it around.
Yeah, because that's muktzah. It's because of muktzah.
Right, so the question is, so this is the problem conceptually in the sense that is that, well, so you're saying that you...
All right, the Gemara says, "Hakama hapet b'Isura."
Yeah.
It's the Gemara. All right. I mean, that kasha is a question just on the Metzias that the Gemara is talking about. It has nothing to do with our Sugya. Okay. The Mishnah in Orla, it's a Nitiyah shel Orla v'shel kilei kerem, when it's mechubar to the karka. Yeah. Shenit arvu b'nitiyot. Right. So you don't know. Right. Normally you label the tree, which is Orla. So the label fell off, and now you don't know which is Orla, which is not. Har'el lo yilkot. Right, because it's kavua. Right. So it's not batel. V'imlikate, but if you pick the fruits from the tree, so now the fruit is parush. Right now it's in a tarovet. V'imlikate yalu bechadu matay. Right, that's the shir bittul for Orla and kilei kerem. Okay. Ubilvad shelo yitkavein lilkot. Because if you mitkavein lilkot, that's bittul לכתחילה. So first of all, you have bittul לכתחילה not only by the standard, the simple case, is simply taking Isser, or taking Heter and adding it to Isser. Here, you're not adding it, you're just changing the circumstances that it should be Batel. Right? For an analogous situation would be, suppose you had a Briah Shlema. So a Briah is not Batel. You have a fly in the soup, and it disappears. Right? It drowned, and it's like gone. You can't find it. But you know it's there. So it's not Batel. So when I say, okay, so what am I going to do? I'm going to pulverize the soup, right? I'm going to put in one of those. What are those called? Are they called? You know those? A bouge, right? Okay. All right. I'm going to do one of those things, and it's going to sorry. So it's going to destroy the briah. So it won't be a briah shleima anymore. So it'll be batel. No, that's bittul לכתחילה. I wasn't marba anything, but I made that davar chashuv into a thing which is not davar chashuv. That's also bittul לכתחילה. Okay? So here you're taking something which is kavua and you're making it parush. It's mechubar lakarka, it's not batel. You pick the fruit, so now it can be batel. Okay? You didn't play with the shiurim, but you played with the circumstances. Okay?
In all these, the assumption is it actually is batal. It's just usher for you, right?
Well, if it's usher, then you treat it as if it's not batel, right?
But
if it's mutter for somebody else, right? So it's batel, yes, and it's usher for you as a knas. Okay, all right. So nitiyah shel orla v'shel kilei kerem shenit arvu b'nitiyot harei lo yilkot imliket yalu bechad u'matayim uvad shel yitkavein lilkot. Rabbi Yossi omer af yitkavein v'yilkot v'yalu bechad u'matayim. Rabbi Yossi says no, it's mutter l'chatchila. So on the face of it, just like a superficial reading of the Mishnah, it's not true. The superficial reading of the Mishnah is that Rabbi Yossi maybe holds that it's mutter levatel l'chatchila. Okay, but it's not true. Let's look at the Yerushalmi. Rabbi Yossi omer afit kavein v'ilkot v'yalucha matayim. So the Gemara asks, "My tama de Rabbi Yossi." So Rabbi Yossi needs justification. The assumption is that it's levatel l'chatchila. So why does he say it's mutter? So he says, "Shekain derech b'nei Adam liot meidal u'miyadel bagfanim." Because it's kedarko, what people always harvest their fruit. Okay. So what does that mean?
Is meidal harvest?
It's the verb that you use to.
Pruning?
Isn't it pruning?
Is pruning? Oh, pruning. Okay. It means you're normally going to cut it anyway, right? So what does that do? It makes it that no, even if you are miskavin, what does he say? It looks like a davar she'enu miskavin, but it is miskavin. The other Rabbi says, Rabbi Yisrael af yitkavein, right? But it's not nikar, right? That it looks like a davar she'enu miskavin. Oh, he's not making it parush. He's not picking it to be mevatel it. He's picking it because he's pruning the tree. Right? So it's not nikar. Okay, that's an important point. We'll come back to it. Right? So the Rabbi Yossi holds that bittul is לכתחילה is aser, But if it's not nikar, then it's mutter. That's what comes out of the Yushalmi. Okay? Okay. Now, this Isser, Levatel Isser L'Chatchila, which we see from the Mishnayot in Trumot and in Orla, okay, is it Asur min Torah or is it Asur midrabbanan? Okay, it's right, and the nature of this Isser is going to be largely determined also whether I consider an Isser D'oraisa and Isser D'Rabbanan. Okay, so here we go back to that Gemara that we saw in the beginning of the year about Zero B'Sheila, right? And the Gemara says that the case of Zero B'Sheila is the aisle of a Nazir. The Zroa is Aser. The Zroa goes to the Kohanim, and the rest is Mutter. Okay, the rest is Mutter to eat. So the halacha is that you have to mevashel the entire aisle together. Right? You have tam of the Zroa going into the rest of the aisle, and it should aser it because the Zroa is aser to eat. So from here, the Gemara wants to say that there's bittul either b'shishim or b'meya. That's how we derive. The question is what the ratio of a zroa to the rest of the animal is. Okay, so that's the sugya there. That's how we derive shishim or meya as the sheer bittul. So the Gemara says, all right. So let's see the Gemara here. The Gemara says, umi alfina mina. How can we learn from the case of zroa b'sheila to a sheer bittul of machalot asurot in general? Vatanya zeu heter ba michlal iser. It's this case which is mutter, but in general, if it wasn't the case of Ayal Nazir, it would be aser. This is an exception to the rule. Zeu lemute mai, lav lemute kol yisurim shebetorah. Right? So that means the shear is not sufficient, and you can't learn what the shear is from here, because it's only mutter and zora b'sheila. No, it's only according to Rabbi Yehuda, even though it's min b'mino, and min b'mino shouldn't be batel. That, when it says zeu hetar b'mechlal iser, it's talking about his shita, right? The min b'mino is all batel, and here it is batel. But for us, it's batel anyway, so for us it's not a chiddush, and we can learn from it. Yeah. So the Gemara says v'ligmar minei. So now learn from here against Rabbi Yehuda. Right? Learn from here that min b'mino is batel, right? So gali rachmana v'lakach midama par midama seir. Travayu b'hadi adadi ninu v'lo batli. Okay, so that I think we talked about this. So you see that min b'mino is not batel because it's still called dama par is merubeh midama seir, and it's still called dama seir. So you see min b'mino is not batel. The Gemara says, so you have two sources. Why do you choose Dama Par, Dama Seir, according to Rabbi Yehuda? Choose from here that it is Batel. So the Gemara answers Chidushu, Michidush Lo Gamrinan. Rabbi Yehuda will say that the case of El Nazir is a Chidush. Okay? And that's why you can't learn from El Nazir that Min B'mino is Batel. This is all according to Rabbi Yehuda. Chidushu. So what's the Chiddush? Rashi says, the L'chatchila heter hitir levatel ha'isur. So the case here is that the zroa is aser, the ayil is mutter, and the Torah says l'chatchila b'mevashel it together. So that's a chiddush, because normally it's an isur levatel isur l'chatchila, but here l'chatchila the Torah tells you to mevatel the isur. Okay, so if you say the simple reading of Rashi and the sugya is if you say it's chidushu, that we're talking about Isur D'oraisa. We're answering why Rabbi Yehuda does not derive min b'mino is batel from Zroa b'sheila. So he says, no, I can't derive it from Zroa b'sheila. B'Zroa b'sheila mevatlan Isur l'chatchila. So that's an exception to the rule, and therefore I cannot derive a din Torah from that. Right? So it's mashma that min ha-Torah ein mevatlan Isur l'chatchila. Okay. And that's what the Ravid, that's how the Ravid understands it also. Okay? V'hadar min and hacha. See the Isser Mashu of the Ravid. You familiar with the Isser Mashu of the Ravid? It's printed, you should know. It's printed in the back of the Torah Tabayit. If you go in the back, the very back, after Torah's Abayis on Mikvos. Isser Mashu La Ravid. Okay? And the whole thing, it's very short, actually. Most of this is like the introduction. Here it's like a few pages. Okay? And it's about Isserei Mashu. That's an unoriginal title for the subject matter. Okay? So he says as follows: Hadam rinan hacha demand mevatel isur b'meizid isura d'Rabbanan hu dafka shenit'arvu me'eleihem o b'shogeg d'midoraita lo shna davar she'b'minyan v'lo shna davar she'enu b'minyan batel b'rov. So the one who says ein vatel isur לכתחילה is only midrabanan is only talking about where the isur is already only d'Rabbanan. Okay? Namely, even if you're talking about Isser Doraita, but it was already Mit-Arev and is a Rov, so that the Isser now is an Isser Dorabanan, okay? Okay? Dafka shenitavu ba'aleihem, o b'shogeg, demi Doraita, lo shna davar shuvminyan, etc. Nimtzak shu potz'an achar nefila, kedei levatlan, ein over al divrei Torah, ve'eno mevatel Isur Torah, ela Isser Dorabanan. You're only mevatel on Isser Dorabanan. You can't have an Isser Doraita to be mevatel on Isser Dorabanan. Yes? Now I'm skipping a little bit. Aval man dema'arev betchila iser letoch heter afilu mashehu. Right, that's why this is an iser mashehu. Right, you need to take a little bit of iser, right, and which is be'en, so it's not batel. Yeah, and you put it in heter kidei lahatiro over al divrei Torah. You're over an iser doraita. Okay? Mimai damrim mesechet chulin gabe zero b'sheila, etc. Okay? So the Ravid says that the Isser, levatel Isser l'chatchila, when you're talking about an Isser d'oraita, is d'oraita. When you're talking about something which is already batel mid d'oraita, and you're just now being mevatel at midrabanan, so that's an Isser d'rabanan. Okay? But Isser levatel Isser l'chatchila is d'oraita, according to the Ravid. Okay? The Rashba, and there's this long Torah Tabayit, says,
the sugya is mantra that it's never, that it's always going to be above chad b'trei. The sugya that we looked at was whether we derived 60 or 100. Nobody had any shaila that it was going to be less than, that it's more than chad b'trei. So Midiaraita, it was going to be
this is
to start with.
Okay, so this is, okay, if you remember the first shiurim, right? How do you learn then at all Shishim and Meah if Shishim and Meah is always a min b'she'eino mina? Your problem goes back to that. So either you say Kachim is different, right? And the Zroa and the Ayil you consider as if it's min b'she'eino mina, but you're talking about Kachim. And then your question falls off. Then the sheer bittul, because you're talking about tam, would be doraisa, if tam kikar is doraisa. And even tam kikar in general is drabanan, it could be tam kikar is doraisa by kachim. Right? That's that whole discussion.
That's the continuation of the subject, right?
Yes, that's the continuation. Right. Okay? But you're right. I mean, on the face of it, it should hit you. But I just remind you what's going on. Okay? All right, so that's...
He goes a far way to extend it because he's saying it's an Isser D'Oraita B'chol Kula.
Who?
The Ravid. Saying that the Isser...
Oh, yeah, no, but the Isser Levata Isser L'Chatchila, you can derive from there, whatever the Isser is. So in Kachim, you have a Shir of Shishim in that instance. So there's an Isser Levata L'Chatchila that way, right? If you have L'Didan, something that's Usser, and the rules of what's Usser and Mutter, and the Shirei Bittul might be different. But you have something that's Usser that you can be Mavatel. So there, the point of Bittul Isser L'Chatchila is unchanging, whether it's Kachim. Or not.
It's a Chiddush.
No, the Chiddush is that there it's Mutter.
Yeah.
Right? But otherwise it would be Usser. Right? Because there's a general principle that whatever Tchum you're in, it's Usser Levatel Isser L'Chatchila. Right?
The fact that the Shulchan Aruch was let you be mevatel that mashu b'shefa means he holds it only d'Rabbanan?
No, we have to understand what the nature of the Isser is. We didn't get to that yet. Okay? So, but the Rashba, let's see here 1 second. Hold on. Here, the whole Shar talks about Bitul L'Chatchila. And he says,
Three things.
yeah, hold on. 1 second. Miu Bisun Shikar Midrabana. 1 second. Yeah, at the end. Let's, okay. Nimtzeu shlosha minim bebitul isurin bebitul isurin. It's towards the end. Yeah. Hechad isur shel Torah, bein shishuro shel Torah, bein shishuro shel divreihem. Right. That's what we talked about. That was the beginning of the Shulchan Aruch. Hasheni isur shel divreihem sheyesh lo ikar min haTorah. Shlishi isur shel divreihem she'en lo ikar min haTorah. Ikar b'doraita. Isur shel Torah v'shiro d'Rabbanan ein tzarich lomar ve'ein tzarich lomar im nafal b'shir she'ein bo kedei levatlo afilu midoraita ein marbin alav heter kedei levatlo she'ein levatlo isur l'chatchila. Okay, 1 second. Where does he say it's just different? No, he doesn't talk about whether it's us dorais or not. Hold on. Let me just find it here. He says it's us midrabanan. He disagrees with the Hold on. He quotes the Gemara in Gid Anasha. Hold on. Here. It's about, I don't know, 12, 13 lines down. If you have...
On which side?
Okay, the first word on the line is mevatlin.
Okay, which side is
The first page of the Rashba. Okay? Tirtzu b'tosafot. See that? The midoraita mevatlin. Udamrinan ein mevatlin midrabanan. Okay? Midoraita, you're allowed to mevatl is l'chatchila. And whenever you see it says ein mevatlin is l'chatchila, it's an issa d'Rabbanan. Right? V'hadamrinan hacha chidushu hachi ka'amar. But it says a chidush, it sounds like it's an issa d'oraita. Hachi ka'amar. Chidushu shechidsha Torah levatlo ma she'ein kein be'alma she'af al pi shemutar levatla gnaihu levatla. Okay? That the chiddush here is not that it's mutter to be mevatel, is it's a mitzvah to be mevatel. Right? Whereas normally it shouldn't be a mitzvah, but it's a gnai. What is that? I'm not exactly sure. Right? Gnai, the gnai is minat Torah. You generally don't have things like that, minat Torah. Minat Torah things are usually cut and dry. It's either mutter or usser. You don't have something in the Torah that it's mutter, but it's a gnai. You shouldn't do it.
It's an attitude about Har'el.
What?
This is sort of an outkeeper for
But
Har'el.
yeah, but that is doraisa. Okay, beseder. You have to open yourself up to that. You do have just parenthetically in Kachim you have this idea of lechatchila and b'diavad. In general, in Dinei Torah you don't have lechatchila b'diavad. You're aware of this, right? Let's just step back for a second. It's an important point. Whenever you say lechatchila, it's asur and b'diavad it's mutter. Whenever you're talking like that, you're not talking about Dinei Torah. You might be talking about that ikar din, the halach is that it's mutter, but there's another sheet that you want to be machmir for, so that's why lechatchila it's asur and b'diavad it's mutter, things like that. But that ikar hadin, something should be asur lechatchila, but mutter b'diavad, doesn't exist in the Torah, except maybe in Kachim. So you have this idea of shina lav hakatuv la'akev. So you have something which you shouldn't do, but it's there. It's the other way around. Something you should do, but it's not ma'akev. If the Torah says you have to do it twice, then it's ma'akev. Like smichat korbanot is not ma'akev. If you bring a korban, you're supposed to do smicha. If you don't do the mitzvah, it's still kasher, right? So that's an example. So in Kachim you have this lechatchila b'diavad thing. Okay, here you shouldn't have it. So the gnai hulo just should raise an eyebrow. I'm just pointing that parenthetically. But Tosfos Shita, as opposed to the Ravid, is that the Isur Levatel Isur Lechatchila is only midrabanan. Okay? All right. Now I want to understand what the nature of the Isser Levatel Isser L'Chatchila is. Why should it be Isser? Right? So here we go back to the Yerushalmi. That talks about Derech B'nei Adam Liot Miyadel Bagfanim. Okay? And you have a similar thing in, that's with regards to, that was regards to the case in Trumot, right? Right. Hold on. Then there's Masechet Orla. Right. Rabbi Yossi Omer. Right. So 1 second. That's here, right? Taman Taninan Sa'at Truma Shenafla L'Me'ah. Right? Techanan U'Pechtu. Right? Kishen Shevchatu Achulin Kach Pachta Truma U'Mutar. Tani Af Yitkaven V'Yilkod V'Yalu B'Echad U'Matayim. Am Rabbi Zera. Divrei HaKol Hi Shekain Derech HaKohanim Liot Tochanin Miduma L'Toch Batehom. So it's mutter in the case of Truma. Why? Because it's also when you're toche, because it's yadua. Like suppose you have the chita of the heter has more volume. In other words, the grain is larger. So when you're toche, you get more flour, and you're going to increase the volume of the heter as opposed to the volume of the isser by being toche. So that should be bitul l'chatchila. So he says no, but it's derech shel the kohanim to do that. So what is that about? It's the same idea that we have derech b'nei adam liyad miyadel b'gefanim, that the maaseh is not nikar. Okay, that means the maaseh. It's the derech you take because people grind up the grain just to make flour. So it's not nikar that they're grinding it up in order to mevatel the isser. It's not like you're taking isser and you're throwing it into heter and you're being mosif, right? It's clear that it's clear from the action that you're doing that it's being done levatel ha'isur. But here you're just grinding grain and making it into flour. So it's not nikar. That's not before you're being mevatel the isser. But it's not clear that that's what you're doing.
Machi just thinks you're grounding flour.
Right? You're just grounding flour, right? Or you're just pruning the... So even if you have kavana, that's the interesting thing. Even though you have kavana to be mevatel the isser, but it's not nikar, right? So you have this idea, according to the Yerushalmi, that even though you're being mevatel isser, if it's not nikar that you're being mevatel the isser, so it's mutar. Okay? You have... hold on 1 second. You also have the Ran. The Ran. The reason I didn't send you the Ran is that it's not in the CD-ROM. So I just gave you the source. Did people have a chance to look at it?
Yeah.
Okay. So the Ran says that. What is it right here? That if it's in the Yud Bet Amud Bet in Dapei Arif, right? He says if you don't have kavana to be mevatel the isser. 1 second. Here at the end. The Dibur Matchil Ibayalahu. At the end, he says, Elavadai lo amru ein mevatel isser, el b'mitkavein la'arev isser beheter, kedei lehenot mimenu. Right? Aval b'mitkavein, there's sort of there's a klutz kasha here. Right? How can it ever be mutter to be machshir kalim? You're always mevatel isser l'chatchila. You have bli in the kli is usser, and you're putting water in the kli. You're extracting the isser, and you're being mevatel it in the water, and now the kli is mutter. So it's bitul isser l'chatchila, right? So he says, yeah, but the isser bitul isser l'chatchila is only when you're kavein to do the bitul in order to be naneh from the isser. Here, you don't want to be naneh from the isser in the water that you do the hagala in. You just want to get rid of it. So even though technically speaking you're mevatel isser, but if you don't have kavanah to be mevatel the isser, that's not the isser mevatel isser l'chatchila. Okay? This is not the same as what you have in the Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi, even though you do have kavana, but since it's not nikar, okay? But the reason I'm mentioning these two shitot together, yeah.
What does it mean you don't want this? I'm not.
When I do Hagalas Kelim, yeah? So I have Blia of Nevela in the Kli,
Yeah.
okay? Do I want to get Hana from this Blias Nevela when I do the Hagala? No. The Nevela is in my way. I want to get Hana from the Kli, right? I want to be able to use the Kli. So in order to use the Kli, I'm Mevatel the Isser.
How's that different from I want to be Mevatel the meat that fell into my thing?
No. So there, you want to eat the meat. You want to eat the Isser.
You don't want it.
Well, you don't want the hana from the
No one to eat the pork. Come on. I mean,
But basically, it's in the tarov, and you want to make it part of your meal. Maybe you don't want to eat it because you have the vela, but you want to make it part of your meal. You're not extracting it, right? He's saying that the kavana here is not to eat the isser. Even let's say you want kavana to eat the isser because you don't want to have to deal with whatever you have to deal with because you don't want to throw out the rest of the food, right? Fine. But your kavana is when you move out to this לכתחילה so that you should be able to eat what's here, right? As opposed to getting rid of what's here. So that's not bitul לכתחילה. Bitul לכתחילה is to want to get hana from the isser, one way or another. Okay? In Hagala, you're not doing it, even though technically speaking you're doing the bitul, but you're not doing it for the bona fide reason of getting hana from the isser. Okay? Now, the reason I'm bringing both these things together,
What if I remove the vein and just want to add to get rid of the tom? That's
what?
also-
No, the tom would also be, you want to be able to eat it with the tom there, right? If you want to extract the tom, that's a different story. But
I want to throw it out, but I just want my pot to be okay.
that's okay. That's exactly what's over here.
Meaning, so I
That would
would
be some-
add to the top shell to make sure the
Yeah,
pot will be okay
yeah.
if I'm willing to throw
Yeah,
it
yeah.
out.
That's the case in Avodah Zarah. The question is how you understand, right? You have kelim that have a blia of yayin nesech, so it says you can be marbe. You can put shechar in the kli to wash it out, right? And this is why they have a discussion about en vatnas לכתחילה here. Now, in any case, the reason I'm bringing this here together with the Yerushalmi is that the stress that's being put on bitul לכתחילה is in the act itself. Because either if you don't have kavana to get hana, or you don't, it's not nikar that you're doing a maaseh of bitul. You're just grinding flour, grinding wheat, or you're just pruning a tree, even though maybe that's your kavana, but it's not nikar that that's what you're doing. So then it's mutar. Okay? Why? Because there's something about the maaseh of bitul isur לכתחילה that I don't like. I don't like doing that. So if you do the maaseh, but it's not nikar, or you don't have kavana, so then it's mutar. That's not the maaseh which the Torah or Rabbanan aser. Okay? I didn't say what it is I don't like, but I don't like. Okay? Yeah?
When you say it's not inkar, you mean to anyone who would see you doing it? If someone
Yeah.
sees you adding to your pot, they don't know either that you're adding to make your pet. They don't know what's going on inside the pot.
Yeah, that's true, but it's still adding to isser. That's nikah that you're throwing in the bit. Like theoretically, it's nikah. You're right. It's not a maris ayin question, right? That would be if it was a maris ayin question. Sometimes it's sort of maris ayin for yourself, right? Because you're doing an action which is only an action of bittul, right? Whereas in the case of grinding up the wheat or pruning the tree,
You always, I don't understand, you always add ingredients to food. Why is it different?
if it's always adding ingredients,
Meaning
it's
that
fine.
I
But it's
fill
so.
in the middle, before I'd added my vegetables to my chicken
So
soup.
you
I
always
add
add
my
vegetables to chicken soup. All right, so maybe there's room to talk about it. Enechinam, right? So you have a fuzzy case, right? But the principle is clear in any case. Right? I hear what you're saying. If you say, but then you'd have to make these chilukim, which generally we don't make. If it fell in the beginning, it fell in the end. You know, those type of things that would just drive you crazy. They say adding or throwing it in or adding volume, that's bitul לכתחילה, right? That's a maaseh bitul. But if it's not nikar for another purpose, right? You're grinding it, and people generally grind it, or you prune it because people generally prune, so that the maaseh is not nikar. Okay, so there it's mitzad the maaseh that we don't like it. Okay, Now, the key to understanding what is it exactly we don't like is a Havamina that you have in the Yerushalmi. Let me see if it's here. The Yerushalmi asks about Truma, right? I'm not sure. Let me see right here. Yeah, okay, good. On the first page, okay, the Yerushalmi and Trumot. Okay? Rabbi Avo b'shem Rabbi Yochanan, you see? Kol ha'isurin sheriba lehem shogeg mutarin mezid asurin. Okay? So the Gemara asks, V'lo matnitin hi? Shogeg mutar mezid asur? So the Yerushalmi answers, matnitin betruma. Ata l'mei malach afilu shar kol advarim. So Yerushalmi has a havamina that bitul isul לכתחילה by truma is different. That maybe it's asl levat isul לכתחילה just by truma. Rabbi Yochanan came along and said it's asl levat isul לכתחילה, so about shari surim. Because I would have thought that bitul isul לכתחילה is only by truma. Any ideas? Why should you have a havamina like that? You have to know a little bit about truma in order to answer that question. So there's a halacha on truma called mishmeret trumotai. There's an issur to be mitame truma. There's an issur to be mitame truma. There's an issur to destroy truma. It's a halacha of mishmeret trumotai. Okay. So the Yerushalmi has a havamina that there's an isur levatel isul לכתחילה by truma, only by truma. Why? Because it basically you were desecrating the kedusha of truma. There's a halacha to be shomer on the kedusha of truma, mishmeret trumotai. So you can't be mevatel isul לכתחילה, dafka by truma. So you say no. It's not only by truma, it's by kol isur. Okay? Now, so it could be that by kol isurim it has nothing to do with what I just described by truma, right? But maybe not, right? Maybe the idea of truma, of ein vatlan isul לכתחילה by truma, because of mishmeret trumotai, is because if the Torah says if the Torah says it's truma, you should make sure it remains truma, right? That's what mishmeret is. So take that idea and apply it to isurim. If the Torah says it's asur, it has to remain asur. You can't be matir what the Rabbanei Shalom asur, right? Unless if it falls in, and so we have dinei bitul, right? But you can't take something which is asur and make it mutter. You're not allowed to do that. The Torah says asur. That's gnaihu, right? If you think about it, maybe that's what's bothering him, right? On the drabba, for him, it doesn't make an isser min Torah, right? But I'm saying, but if it's an isser min Torah, I'm trying to understand the Ravid. The Torah says it's asur. You can't make it mutter.
But the whole sugya in truma is only a drabbanan. Nobody can bring a raya from that sugya. The din of bittul of chad b'meya by truma is only midrabbanan. You're right that it's mevutel chad b'trei.
No, but it fell. But it says if it fell in b'shogeg, it's mutter. If you took truma be'en.
But I'm just saying that the whole sugya in the mahala that you're developing works if it's a din drabbanan. Now to upgrade it and say that according to Rashi and the Ravid who hold that ein vatlan isul לכתחילה min Torah, to use this doesn't make sense.
Why?
Because it makes sense to have a din of ganai midrabbanan. It doesn't make sense.
No. I'm saying so. If you could say that when the Torah says something is asur, right? It doesn't stop saying that it's asur. It says you're not allowed to be matir it. If you say ein vatlan isul לכתחילה min is asur min Torah, so what is it? So just like you have a din d'oraita by truma in the form of mishmeret trumotai, so there it has to do with preserving the kedusha of truma. Okay? So I might think that only is in truma. There's no kedusha to nevela and to treifa, right? But maybe I can learn something about the nature What don't I like in Truma? Because